I have never told anyone this story, not in full anyway. It happened 3 years ago when I was 23. I had just moved out of my parents' house into a small rental home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I liked the isolation, the silence. After years of living with family, I finally had a place of my own. No loud siblings, no awkward conversations with my mum about my future. Just me and my thoughts. Looking back, maybe that was the problem. Maybe I was too comfortable being alone, because the things that happened over the next few weeks made me question if I was ever really alone at all. The first night in the house was uneventful, but by the second night I started hearing things. It was just small noises at first, creaks in the walls, shuffling sounds in the attic, nothing too strange. Old houses settle and make noises, I told myself. But by the third night, the noises became harder to ignore. I was lying in bed, staring at my phone, when I heard my closet door creak open slowly. I didn't move for a few seconds. My heart was pounding. But when I finally sat up, I saw that the door had only opened a few inches, like maybe the latch hadn't caught all the way. I got up, closed it firmly, and even yanked on it to make sure it was secure. That night, I dreamed of whispering voices coming from the closet, low murmurs like a conversation just out of reach. I woke up drenched in sweat. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was overthinking things. But then the fourth night came. I was lying in bed half asleep when I heard the rattling from above the ceiling. It sounded like something moving in the air ducts, scratching at the metal. It wasn't just a one-time thing, it kept going. A slow, deliberate scraping noise, like nails dragging against the surface. I grabbed a flashlight, climbed onto my bed, and shined it up at the air vent. I saw nothing, but when I turned the flashlight off and stared at little longer, I swore I saw something move behind the slats, a shadow shifting. I didn't sleep that night. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. I tried to brush off the weird noises, telling myself it was just an old house settling. I even avoided looking at the vent in my room. But I couldn't ignore what happened next. I had just come home from work when I noticed something off my bedroom door was open, just slightly wider than I'd left it. I stepped inside and froze. My closet door was open again, but this time it was fully open. My stomach sank. I told myself maybe I had forgotten to close it in the morning, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. That night, I set up my phone to record while I slept. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but when I checked the footage in the morning, my blood ran cold. At exactly 3:17 a.m., my closet door creaked open slowly. But that wasn't even the worst part. A few seconds later, my bed shifted, just slightly, like something had crawled underneath it. I didn't even finish watching the video. I jumped out of bed, grabbed a broom, and dropped to the floor to look under the bed. There was nothing there, but I knew something had been. I called my best friend Mark and told him everything. He laughed at first, but when he saw the video, his face went pale. We decided to check the attic together. The entrance to the attic was a small pull-down ladder in the hallway. We climbed up, flashlight in hand. As we scanned the space, there wasn't much up there, just insulation and a few wooden beams. Then Mark pointed at something in the corner, a pile of old blankets and an empty food wrapper. My breath hitched. Someone had been living up here. I felt sick. We climbed down and called the police. When they arrived, they did a sweep of the house, but they didn't find anyone. They told me it was probably a squatter who had been sneaking in through an unlocked window. I didn't believe that I always locked my doors and windows. They said they would file a report, but unless something else happened, there wasn't much they could do. That night, I locked every single window and door in my house. I even put a chair under my bedroom doorknob. But sleep didn't come easily. At 3 a.m., I woke up to a loud thud. It came from the attic. I held my breath, listening. My phone was on the nightstand, but I didn't dare reach for it. Another thud followed. Then a slow creak. I knew without a doubt that someone was up there. Then the air vent in my room rattled a little. I sat frozen as I watched a single screw from the vent fall to the floor. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. Then slowly the vent cover began to slide off. My breath caught in my throat, and then I saw it, two wide, unblinking eyes staring down at me from inside the vent. I bolted, I grabbed my keys and ran out of the house, calling 911 as I ran into the street. The police arrived quickly, but again they found nothing. But this time something was different. The vent cover in my room was completely removed, and there were scratches on the inside of the metal. I refused to stay another night there. I packed a bag and went to stay with Mark. The next morning, I went back to the house. With him in daylight, everything felt less terrifying. But as I packed my things, Mark pointed out something near my closet. I turned and saw it. My closet door was open again. But this time, there was something new, a single word carved into the wood. Mine. I broke my lease. That same day, I never went back to that house. I don't know who or what was in there with me. I don't know if it was a person or something else. All I know is that whatever it was, it did not want me there, and I was lucky to have left when I did. I have never believed in ghosts or demons or anything supernatural, but after what happened to me last summer, I don't know what to believe anymore. I was house-sitting for a family friend, an older man named Mr. Hendricks. He owned a large property out in the woods about an hour from town. The house itself was old, with creaky wooden floors and dim yellow lighting. It had this weird stale smell, like the air hadn't been moved in years. He was going on a 3-week trip and asked me to watch over the place, make sure no one broke in, take care of his 2 dogs, and just be present. I needed the money, so I agreed. If I had known what was going to happen, I would have never stepped foot in that house. The first night was uneventful. I watched some TV, let the dogs out, and went to bed. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. But then I heard it again, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving across the floor downstairs. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The dogs weren't barking, so I told myself, maybe I imagined it. But then the sound came again, this time closer. I grabbed the baseball bat I had brought with me and crept down the stairs, my breath caught. When I saw the front door was wide open, the wind howled outside, blowing the curtains inward like someone had just walked in. I checked every room, turned on every light, but there was no one there. I locked the door and told myself I must have forgotten to close it. But I knew I hadn't. The next few nights were worse every time I went to bed. I would wake up around 3 a.m. to the same sound, footsteps in the hallway. The first few times, I rushed out to check but found nothing. After a while, I stopped getting up and just lay there listening, hoping it would go away, but it never did. One night I decided to set up my phone to record while I slept. The next morning when I checked the footage, my stomach dropped at exactly 3:12 a.m. My bedroom door, which had been shut, slowly creaked open, and for the next 5 minutes the door stayed open. But then something else happened. My blankets moved, just slightly, like someone had tugged on them. I felt sick. I had been asleep the entire time. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just the wind, maybe the house was drafty. But deep down I knew better. Things escalated quickly after that one night. Woke up to the sound of scratching inside the walls. At first it was faint, like mice, but then it grew louder, more frantic, like something was trying to claw its way out. Then the footsteps returned, except this time they didn't stop outside my door. They kept coming until they were right beside my bed. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. The air was ice cold, and I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, like something was standing over me, watching. I wanted to look, but I was too scared. Then the whispering started. It was low, barely audible words. I couldn't make out, but they were there in the silence. I finally snapped. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and bolted out of the room. But the moment the light flooded the space, there was nothing there. Just an empty hallway, and the scratching stopped. I was done. I called Mr. Hendricks the next day, told him something was wrong with the house. He seemed completely unfazed, just chuckled and said, "Oh, you heard them, didn't you?" I asked what the hell he was talking about, but he refused to explain. Just told me not to worry and that it was nothing dangerous. That was the last straw. I packed my bags, told him I couldn't finish the job, and left. But even after I left, things didn't go back to normal. The nightmares started that same week. Every night I would dream of the house, of standing in that hallway with something waiting in the shadows. I never saw its face, but I knew it was there watching, waiting sometimes. In my dreams, I would wake up back in the bedroom, trapped, unable to move. I would hear the whispering again, closer, louder, telling me things I didn't want to understand. One night, I woke up in my own apartment to find my bedroom door open. I know for a fact I had closed it before bed. I checked every inch of my place, but it was empty. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was out of place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. I started leaving the lights on at night, started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, but the nightmares never stopped. Every night I was back in that house, stuck in the endless dark hallways, searching for something I knew I never wanted to find. Then one morning I woke up with deep scratches on my arm, 3 long marks running from my wrist to my elbow, like something had been holding me. I couldn't explain it. I didn't have long nails. There was nothing in my bed that could have done that. I tried to rationalize it, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the fear that something was still with me. I stopped sleeping completely, tried to keep myself awake, but exhaustion caught up with me one night. I passed out on the couch, and when I woke up, I saw something in the corner of my living room. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, but then it moved, a figure hunched and twitching with long limbs, and no face. I blinked and it was gone, but I knew it had been there. I don't stay anywhere for too long anymore. I move from place to place, hoping that whatever I brought back with me loses interest, but it never does. I still wake up to the sound of footsteps, still hear the whispering in the dead of night, and sometimes I feel it standing right behind me, waiting, just waiting for me to look. I always thought my small town was boring. Nothing ever happened here. No crime, no real excitement, just the same daily routine of going to work, coming home, and wasting time. Until bed, I used to tell myself I wanted something interesting to happen, something that would shake up my life. I never should have wished for that. It started when I moved into my new apartment. It was cheap, too cheap, but I didn't ask questions. I just signed the lease and moved in. The place was small, just a 1-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor of an old building, the landlord told me. The place had been empty for a while, which didn't surprise me. The whole building felt abandoned. The hallways were always silent. No neighbors, no sounds, just emptiness. The first night was uneventful. I unpacked, made some ramen, and watched TV until I passed out on the couch around 2 a.m. I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought it was just my upstairs neighbor moving around, but then I remembered I didn't have an upstairs neighbor. The top floor was empty, but the footsteps were loud, heavy, and slow. They moved across the ceiling, like someone was pacing back and forth. I lay there frozen, listening, waiting for them to stop. They never did. The next morning, I asked the landlord if someone had moved in upstairs. He just shook his head and told me no one had lived on the top floor in years. That should have been my sign to leave, but I didn't. I convinced myself I had imagined it. The second night was worse. The footsteps came back, but this time, they weren't just above me, they were in the hallway outside. My door slow, shuffling steps, moving back and forth. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept to the door. I looked through the peephole, expecting to see someone, but the hallway was empty. The next few nights, the noises got worse. The footsteps turned into scratching at my door, then whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice was low, distorted, like someone was speaking. Through water, I started keeping the lights on at night, but that didn't help. I'd wake up to find my closet door open or my bathroom light turned on, even though I never touched it. One night, I came home late from work and found my front door unlocked. I knew I had locked it. Before leaving, my hands shook as I pushed it open. The apartment was dark, silent, nothing seemed out of place, but then I noticed it. The air felt thick, almost heavy, like someone was standing in the room with me. I turned on every light and searched every corner. Nothing was there, but I knew I wasn't alone. I set up my phone to record while I slept. I needed proof that I wasn't going crazy. The next morning I checked the footage and my stomach dropped at 3:14 a.m. My bedroom door, which had been closed, slowly creaked open. Then, for the next few minutes, nothing happened. But then my blankets moved slightly, like someone had brushed past them. The worst part was the shadow in the corner. It was tall, hunched, and it stayed there the entire time. Watching, I called the landlord and demanded to know if someone had died in my apartment. He hesitated before finally admitting that a tenant had gone missing years ago. An old woman, no family, no friends. She just disappeared, and no one had ever figured out what happened to her. They found all her things untouched. Her bed made her fridge still full, but she was just gone. I started staying at a friend's place, only going back to the apartment during the day to grab things. One evening, I stopped by to pick up some clothes, and when I stepped inside, I froze. Every single cabinet in my kitchen was open. My bedroom door was wide open, and the closet light was on. I hadn't been there in days. But the worst part was the smell. The air was thick with the scent of something rotting, something old. I was done. I grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed as many clothes as I could inside, and turned to leave. But then I heard it, the whispering right behind me. Closer than ever. I didn't look back. I ran, slammed the door shut, and didn't stop running until I was outside in my car. I moved out that night. I didn't care about breaking the lease. I didn't even go back for the rest of my stuff. But even after I left, things didn't go back to normal. I started waking up in the middle of the night to find my bedroom door open. In my new place, I started hearing faint whispers. When I was alone at work, when I walked down empty streets at night, and sometimes I see shadows moving in the corner of my vision. But when I turn to look, there's nothing there. I know now that whatever was in that apartment never really left. It followed me, and I don't think it's ever going to leave.